All right, hello and welcome to another episode of Mike Reads. Tonight we'll be continuing in our series on Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations with the second part of Chapter 11 of The Rent of Land. A second part in title for these videos, as we are still in Adam Smith's Part 1 of The Produce of Land Which Always Affords Rent. Tonight's going to be a really short read because I've got an engagement tonight. Probably get about 5 or 10 minutes in here. But we have to go back a paragraph here because I kind of lost my place a little bit, and it's not really intuitive stopping point from last night. So anyways, we'll dive right on in here. In a hop garden, a fruit garden, a kitchen garden, both the rent of the landlord and the profit of the farmer are generally greater than in a corn or grass field. But to bring the ground into this condition requires more expense. Hence a greater rent becomes due to the landlord. It requires, too, a more attentive and skillful manager. Hence, a greater profit becomes due to the farmer. The crop, too, at least in the hop and fruit garden, is more precarious. Its price, therefore, besides compensating all occasional losses, must afford something like the profit of insurance. The circumstances of gardeners, generally mean, and always moderate, may satisfy us that their great ingenuity is not commonly over-recompensed. Their delightful art is practiced by so many rich people for amusement that little advantage is to be made by those who practice it for profit, because the persons who should naturally be their best customers supply themselves with all their most precious productions. The advantage which the landlord derives from such improvements seems at no time to have been greater than what was sufficient to compensate the original expense of making them. In the ancient husbandry after the vineyard, a well-watered kitchen garden seems to have been the part of the farm which was supposed to yield the most valuable produce. But Democritus, who wrote upon husbandry about 2,000 years ago, and who was regarded by the ancients as one of the fathers of the art, thought they did not act wisely who enclosed a kitchen garden. The profit, he said, would not compensate the expense of a stone wall and bricks. He meant, I suppose, bricks baked in the sun, molded with the rain and the winter storm, and required continual repairs. Columella, who reports this judgment of Democritus, does not convert it, but proposes a very frugal method of enclosing with a hedge of brambles and briars, which he says he had found by experience to be both a lasting and impenetrable fence, but which it seems was not commonly known in the time of Democritus. Palladius adopts the opinion of Columella, which had before been recommended by Varro. In the judgment of those ancient improvements, the produce of a kitchen garden had, it seems, been little more than sufficient to pay the extraordinary culture and the expense of watering. For in countries so near the sun it was thought proper in those times as in the present to have the command of a stream of water, which could be conducted to every bed in the garden. Through the greater part of Europe, a kitchen garden is not at present supposed to deserve a better enclosure than that recommended by Columella. It's probably Columella. In Great Britain and some other northern countries, the finer fruits cannot be brought to perfection but by the assistance of a wall. Their price, therefore, in such countries, must be sufficient to pay the expense of building and maintaining what they cannot be had without. The fruit wall frequently surrounds the kitchen garden, which thus enjoys the benefit of an enclosure which its own produce can seldom pay for. That the vineyard, when properly planted and brought to perfection, was the most valuable part of the farm, seems to have been an undoubted maxim in the ancient agriculture, as it is in the modern through all the wine countries. But whether it was advantageous to plant a new vineyard, it was a matter of dispute among the ancient Italian husbandmen, as well as we learn from Columella. He decides, like a true lover of all curious cultivation, in favor of the vineyard, and endeavors to show, by a comparison of the profit and expense, that it was a most advantageous improvement. Such comparisons, however, between the profit and expense of new projects are commonly very fallacious, and in nothing more so than in agriculture. Had the gain actually made by such plantations been commonly as great as he imagined it might have been, there could have been no dispute about it. The same point is frequently at this day a matter of controversy in the wine countries. Their writers on agriculture, indeed, the lovers and promoters of high cultivation, seem generally disposed to decide with Columella in favor of the vineyard. In France, the anxiety of the proprietors of the old vineyards to prevent the planting of any new ones seems to favor their opinion, and to indicate a consciousness in those who must have the experience that this species of cultivation is at present in that country more profitable than any other. It seems at the time, however, to indicate another opinion, that the superior profit can last no longer than the laws which at present restrain the free cultivation of the vine. In 1731, they obtained an order of council prohibiting both the planting of new vineyards and the renewal of those old ones, of which the cultivation had been interrupted for 2 years, without a particular permission from the king, to be granted only in consequence of an information from the intendant of the province, certifying that he had examined the land and that it was incapable of any other culture. The pretense of this order was the scarcity of corn and pasture and the superabundance of wine. But had this superabundance been real, it would, without any order of council, have effectually prevented the plantation of new vineyards by reducing the profits of these species of cultivation below their natural proportion to those of corn and pasture. With regard to the supposed scarcity of corn and occasioned by the multiplication of vineyards, corn is nowhere in France more carefully cultivated than in the wine provinces, where the land is fit for producing it, as in Burgundy, Guyenne, and the upper Languedoc. The numerous hands employed in the one by species of cultivation necessarily encourage the other, by affording a ready market for its produce. To diminish the number of those who are capable of paying for it is surely a most unpromising expedient for encouraging the cultivation of corn. It is like the policy which would promote agriculture by discouraging manufacturers. All right, I actually have to call it quits right there. We'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully there won't be as much French and ancient Latin. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, this has been Mike, signing off.